Welcome to episode 4, and in this episode, I'm gonna be touching on this subject, the minimum wage, and um, I'm I'm gonna discuss about minimum wage and how it is often thought of as a very beneficial policy, a very beneficial law that is being applied on the entire population. That it sounds like a very good idea. Like, who wouldn't want everyone to be paid at least at a minimum level? Like, if we know what is the amount that is required to survive in the society, wouldn't it be a very good idea to have the law mandate that every employers in Malaysia give all their workers at least a minimum threshold, a minimum amount of money. That means if the businesses don't pay that amount, they will get fined, they will get penalized. So that sounds like a brilliant idea. But actually, it is I will say it's a myth that minimum wage is going to solve all this problem about employers paying their staff too low, not paying enough to their employees. It is absolutely not going to solve the problem. So let's get into the nitty gritty details of what a minimum wage law actually do, right? So because I'm touching on this subject mainly because I've been wanting to dismiss all these people who are always saying that if you're against minimum wage, you are a very cruel, very cold-blooded person. You are a merciless individual. Actually, that cannot be further than the truth. In fact, people who are against minimum wage, they know exactly what is going on, and I'm gonna tell you now why people who are against minimum wage, who are against the government mandating a law to control how much the employers must pay, at least at the minimal level. Yeah, this is actually very, very bad for the employee. Okay, and I'm gonna explain to you why. So, first of all, let's look into what group of people is affected by the minimum wage the most. Okay, that means who are the one that is the most affected by minimum wage, a minimum wage law. Okay, so the answer would be, it's definitely not the employer, because when you mandate a minimum wage law, let's say 1,200, which is the current Malaysian minimum wage level. If you mandate at 1,200 ringgit minimum wage, does it affect the employer? No. Of course it does. It does make them think twice when they are hiring someone. Okay, so in a way it affects their hiring decision. But you have to remember, the minimum wage do not, under any circumstances, it does not force the employer to hire anyone. Okay, that means the employer, after taking into account all the prospective candidate, he will look at how much he's paying the minimum wage, whether it will justify the 1,200 ringgit to get this candidate on board into his business to run his operation. He will take all those into account, and at the end of the day, if he cannot justify the amount 1,200 ringgit to hire that candidate, that means he value the work that the candidate is going to give to him at below 1,200 ringgit, he's just not going to hire that person. No matter how you convince him, he's just not going to throw 1,200 ringgit on someone that is not going to provide the equivalent value of the money that he's going to spend, right? So there is no law that says the employer must hire someone. So at the end of the day, the minimum wage does not affect the business owner. So it's as simple as that. There is no law at all that can force any employer, again I emphasize this, no laws can force any employer to hire anyone. So even with this minimum wage, the employer can always say no to any hirings. Okay, so the minimum wage does not affect the employer. Okay, so you'll be asking, so who is the one that will be most affected, right? So you look around, you probably don't know anyone that is getting minimum wage. Not all of us have like friends who are getting minimum wage, but we are always like wants to like say we are a very moral society. We don't want anyone to suffer. Okay, so the group that is most affected by the minimum wage is, of course, this group of people that is at the level where they are providing a service which is near or below the minimum wage. Okay, so there are many jobs like that, like factory workers, the assembly line workers, like your janitors. I mean, really manual labor work where easily replaceable, where there's a lot of supply. These are the workers, basically the workers who are at the lowest rank of the workforce. These are the people that is the most affected by the minimum wage law. And of course, it doesn't affect those people who are like earning 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 ringgit a month. They are totally not affected. Okay, so we have to remember the minimum wage law affects this group the most, and it is precisely because of this we have to understand this minimum wage law is actually really against them. Okay, it doesn't affect those people who are earning, like I said earlier, it doesn't affect those people who are earning more than the minimum wage. Like if you're earning like 5,000, 10,000, this minimum wage law will not even touch you at all. It doesn't concern you. All right. So when a minimum wage law takes into effect, what happens is, if your skills, your service that you're going to provide to your potential employer does not justify the minimum level, the minimum wage, which is 1,200 ringgit. That means, let's say, after taking into account everything that a person can do is worth less than 1,200 ringgit, you are not going to get a job. Okay, simple as that. You are not going to be able to convince the employer to hire you. In other words, you are being priced out by the minimum wage law. Yeah, you are being priced out of the job market. That means you don't even have an opportunity to prove yourself, because no employer is going to hire you and pay you 1,200 ringgit and take the risk. They don't know whether you can perform more than what you say, that kind of thing. They don't know, because they don't want to take the risk, because if you don't perform, let's say ultimately the value that you are going to give to your prospective employer is going to be like 1,000 ringgit or maybe 900. Okay, that's as much as you are valued by your employer. So he's going to lose, let's say 900 ringgit is the value that you give to your future boss. So what happens is, he's going to lose 300 ringgit, okay, just to get you on board. And he's not going to do that. Okay, he will rather hire somebody, pay somebody more, and try to get his money worth. That's exactly what all businesses does. They do not make loss-making decisions. Okay, they need to operate on a profit. Okay, so that's one thing. So as you can see, that's one way the minimum wage can price the low tiered workers where their labor is not valued as much out of the job market totally. So in a way, minimum wage can cause unemployment to these people that is immediately affected. Okay, so there's totally no way we can justify having a minimum wage law at all. So I don't know why. I don't know why all these countries and all these governments, making all these populist policies, trying to like act like they are very moral, like, oh, we are in a very civilized society, we cannot see all these people suffer. But the real fact that is that after implementing this kind of minimum wage policies and laws, it is exactly the opposite of what's going to happen. The intention is definitely feels very good, right? But it's totally the opposite. The effect in reality is opposite of what they started out they want to do. Okay, so no way. There's no way you can justify it. And there's another thing that we have to also take into consideration, because when the government mandates the minimum wage law, they usually don't mandate it in like, okay, KL has this level of minimum wage, Johor has this minimum wage level, and then Penang you have another set of minimum wage, like maybe Penang you set it at 1,150, in KL you set it at 1,200, and in Johor maybe 900. They don't do that. They just set one figure, and in fact that figure I have no idea how they calculate it, right? Nobody knows where they just plug it out from from thin air. It's a figure they just felt like, oh, okay, this should be a figure that most people would not complain about. I don't know what is the basis of using what kind of data that they derive this 1,200. So basically, my point is, because they don't segregate the minimum wage levels according to the states. Okay, so I'm going to explain to you why this makes this low tiered manual labor workers, why this causes their predicament to be worse. Okay, so let's say they set 1,200 in across the country, right? So if you compare the living standards in Klang Valley, okay, 1,200 ringgit minimum wage, and you compare, let's say, Kemaman in Terengganu. So you imagine, because the living standards in Kemaman is probably much lower, because maybe the rental is lower, there's not so much expenses that you need to spend, there's not much entertainment, right? So what's going to happen is you are going to cause the people in Kemaman to really lose their jobs there, because no employer is going to be able to fork out 1,200 ringgit to hire anyone, because they just can't justify it, right? The business, the market, the conditions in Kemaman is probably like maybe 10 to 20% of Klang Valley, right? The business just cannot cover the expenses of paying minimum wage. So they end up not hiring at all, right? So people don't get hired, and you create more job loss because of this kind of I would just call it a dumb policy. So minimum wage, again, do not take all these things into account. So it is a very, very I would say, very idiotic policy. So there will be a lot of other instances where I can prove to you that minimum wage law doesn't work in reality. It sounds very, very good in theory. Sounds very, very good when our politicians, say it on the stage. they grandstand this kind of policy. It just doesn't make sense, right? So there are a lot of other things and other issues that can come out from minimum wage. So then you'll be asking, so are you saying that it's better not to have minimum wage? Then how are you going to protect the welfare of the workers? Okay, so I would say that's a valid question. I mean, not having minimum wage will be a good start. Okay, so because a minimum wage law, like I have said earlier, is against the workers. You just don't know, you don't see it, so you don't actually realize how bad it is for these workers. So I'm all for no laws, no labor laws that should affect the workers and the employer's contract. Okay, whatever that happens between the workers and the employer should be just between these two parties, right? As long as the workers are agreeable to the terms and conditions set by the employers, they are not being forced to work, right? Like they are not being asked to be slaves in their operations, in the business, then all should be fine. Okay, just let the workers and the employers to sort it out themselves within the boundaries of laws. Okay, that means nobody is cheating anyone, right? So let the law decide. We already have laws for that. Like if the employer is not paying the workers a certain amount of wages that he already promised, okay, then let the workers sue the employer. Okay, we have laws for that. But other than that, as long as the terms that they have mutually agreed upon, and the workers is willing to work at that price, and the employer is paying the workers at that price, just let them proceed with that, right? Because then the way to protect the worker is very simple. As long as there's other working job opportunities out there where he can apply, then he is pretty much protected, right? Because as he starts to work, let's say he is an entry-level job, he starts from 800, so he will learn a lot of skills. So he have the opportunity. Whereas when you have the minimum wage law, he don't even have the opportunity to start from like the lowest rank in the job market. So again, that's what you don't even have a chance when you have a minimum wage law. So if you don't set all these kind of silly laws, the workers can just say, okay, I'm going to try and invest 3 months of my time with this company. I don't mind the companies paying me a bit less, okay, although I know I can perform better than what he's paying me for. But I'm very confident that after I get the job, I show the boss how much I can do, what I can produce, how much I can contribute to his bottom line. He is gonna make sure he wants me to stay in the company, and he's gonna have to raise my pay, because if he doesn't, I can always go, because I've learned a lot of things along the next 3 months, and I can use those experience and tell my next prospective employer, and tell him that, I have all this experience and I have learned this in this so and so company, and I want you to pay me at least like 1,300, 1,400, according to the experience that he has already learned. Okay, so as you can see, the way to protect these employees, these workers, is by allowing them to get into the job market, start getting productive, learn some skills, and eventually they can go out into the job market and they become more attractive to the employers out there. That is the only way. And the best part is, there are so many employers looking for workers to fill up their production line. Okay, there is always, the free market always provide a lot of employers. So as long as you can prove to these employers that you can work, you can provide what they want, there's no reason why they won't hire you. Okay, of course you can come and tell me there's all this discrimination and all these things, but life is not fair. That's the way it is. So you just need to up your odds. You need to show your employers what you can do, and if they're still not going to hire you, it's their loss. You can keep trying as long as you have the skills. So what these low rank manual labor workers who are getting minimum wage level kind of salary, they just need that start. Okay, so minimum wage is bad for them. Minimum wage denies them the start, because straight away they don't even have the opportunity to be tried by all these employers. Okay, so minimum wage law is bad. Okay, so I'm gonna end my minimum wage rant at this point, and I hope I have made it clear in the past 20 minutes or so that minimum wage law sounds good in theory, but it's actually a very bad and very harmful law that any governments can enact and to the population. Yeah, it's just counterproductive. So again, I urge anyone who's listened to this, you think about it. I have to admit, when I was in my 20s, I really thought this minimum wage thing is a good thing. Okay, I've been there, and actually a lot of my friends who has discussed with me on this topic, all of them come from that point of view. Okay, but after looking at all this data, all this actual impact and evidence that is happening in the real job market, I've been in the job market for for the past 20 years, 25 years, right? So I've seen this thing in action, right? It's not theory. I've seen it with my own eyes, right? This minimum wage law is not good for the economy, not good for the productivity of these people who are doing manual labor at the lower ranks of the workforce. So if you really want to help these people out, you would not want to encourage the government to mandate any kind of minimum wage law. Yeah, that's all I want to say. Okay, and thank you for listening. See you in the next episode. Bye.